Hi again, everybody. We are going to talk about Chapter 8 today. Chapter 8 really gets into leading different types of group fitness classes and the ability to be effective at, teaching or imparting the information to our participants. So understanding the different learning styles that people might have, what stage of learning are they in, and then also the different types of teaching strategies that we can use to help them have a good, or a great experience in our group fitness classes. So participants have really three different learning styles. We have the verbal, the visual, and the kinesthetic learning styles. So the manner in which cues are delivered in a group fitness class is based on the three ways that people learn. So most participants can use all three techniques to varying degrees and assimilate a range of different types of cues. Most learners tend to favor one particular instructional method as their preferred way to obtain information. So, even though we, can cue in all three ways, verbal, visual, and kinesthetic cues, some people tend to favor, one way over another. So it's important that we understand how to accommodate each one of those learning styles. So first of all, looking at the the verbal learners, these are the people that need to hear the specific cues. We must be specific. We need to explain first, give them time to absorb the information, and then perform the exercise. We also want to make sure that clarity of sound is important. We have clarity when we speak with diction, we are specific, we are loud, they can hear us, and they can understand what we're saying. So the people who are verbal, they really need us to talk. They need to hear how we want them to perform the exercise. So definitely voice care is important when it comes to this because as a group fitness instructor, we tend to talk a lot. So we want to take care of our voice. So first of all, some things that can help is to project from the diaphragm. So projecting from the diaphragm when you talk. Also, if you have a microphone, you don't need to yell. Just speak at a normal tone, just like I am right now. There's no need to yell into a microphone. It's already doing the job for you. Also, drink a lot of water. Small, frequent sips of water is going to help our voice and try to avoid frequent coughing. Also, something else that works is to cue before or after the effort of an exercise. So we don't want to cue right in the middle of a push-up, right? During the exertion phase. We want to wait and cue either before we do the movement or immediately after. And also keep the music at a proper decibel level that does not require shouting. I know we like to turn the music up. That can be very motivating for people. But also on the same side, we want to take care of our voice. So we don't need to scream over top of the music. If we have a microphone, that's going to help. Okay, but if you don't have a microphone, make sure the volume of the music is at a proper level where you do not have to constantly shout. If you're teaching multiple classes over the course of the week and you're constantly shouting in each and every class, that's going to take its toll on your voice. So just be cautious of those things. The visual learners, okay, those are the people that they need to see the specific cues, okay? So we need to incorporate more body language and those types of cues to these particular individuals. So this could also be people who are hearing impaired, or maybe those people who speak a different language than we do. They're going to require or rely on the visual cue signs that we might give them to be able to perform the exercise. So they need to position themselves in places where they can see, right? They need to be able to see the instructor. So some considerations for delivering these visual cues is number one, choose appropriate orientation to the mirror. So if you, the instructor, face the mirror, along with the participants, they're also facing the mirror. The advantage of that is that it allows the participants to follow you exactly as they move, right? They are mimicking exactly what you're doing. The disadvantage is we lose that personal connection. We can't, it's harder to make eye contact. You can through the mirror, but it's a little more difficult. So this can diminish over time due to the indirect eye contact through the mirror, right? So we can hopefully at least make that eye contact through the mirror. So build rapport with your participants with that eye contact. You know, if we do face them, right, we do face the individuals in our classes, the advantage is it allows us to build that rapport with direct eye contact. We can see the front, they can see the front of the group fitness instructor more clearly because you're facing them. The disadvantage of this would be that you, the group fitness instructor, has to practice mirroring cues. So that might be a little difficult, especially for those folks who are newer to leading group exercise. If you have to mirror them, so if you tell them to do something on the right, they're doing it on their right leg, but you should be doing it on your left leg. So you're mirroring them. So you're kind of opposite as far as right and left, and that takes a little practice with your cueing. But visual learners, you know, they do require really rely on those visual cues. So here are some visual cue signs that are pretty common that group fitness instructors can use in their classes. So this first one right here, see how she's pointing with those two fingers to her eyes? She's basically saying, hey, watch me. So when we use that visual cue sign and point to our eyes, we're really stressing the importance of our participants to watch us, the instructor, so they can see how to perform the movement. This next one here, where her arm's just straight up in the air, that's a hold. So stay there or keep doing what you're doing. Maybe you have them in a holding pattern of, you know, in a step aerobics class, they're doing a knee corner to corner. You want them to stay in that holding pattern or keep doing that thing that they're doing. This next one here where she's patting the top of her head, that means from the top. So if you went down a whole bunch of choreography, a whole bunch of exercises, one right after the other, and then you want to repeat it, you just simply tap the top of your head. You say, okay, we're going to do it all from the top again. Let's repeat it all from the top. And then the directional cues, pointing forward, pointing backwards, directional, two to the right, two to the left type thing, or just one finger, single, like one knee maybe, or two fingers could mean maybe like a double knee. Other ones, lead leg, where she's pointing to that right leg, saying, okay, right. If you want to say right, you could also point to that right leg. That's being the lead leg. Here, staying in place. Here, shifting to face this direction. Here, alternating the hands up and down would be a march in place. This could be hold this position and change. Also, this could be used to show either a progression or a regression, if you wanted to do that. Breathe exclusively through the nose, so just reinforcing inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, just reinforcing that. Thumbs up, positive reinforcement. So there's a lot of visual cue signs that we can use as we teach our classes. And again, these are the types of signs that those people who are visual learners are going to really rely on throughout class. The last learning style is the kinesthetic. These people need to feel the specific cues. So we need to use words like sense or imagine or pretend or feel or, for example, pinch that pencil between your shoulder blades. That feeling of, okay, I'm pinching or squeezing my shoulder blades together. And by saying that, that gets those participants to really stand upright with their posture, squeeze those shoulder blades together, pull them together. So that's going to allow them to pull their shoulders back. So they need to know what it feels like. So incorporating some of those kinesthetic cues can be very, very important. So they must do it to learn it, right? They need to go through the movements, know what it feels like in order to learn that. So provide cues and feedback through hands-on assists. If we're going to touch someone in our class, first and foremost, we have to ask permission before just touching a person. It's always great if we want a correct form, but if you can do it verbally, that's the best. But if, those kinesthetic learners, they need to feel. So for example, if I have somebody doing a bird dog exercise, or let's say even a bent over row, right? And I come up behind them, I get permission to touch, and I put my hand right between their shoulder blades and say, squeeze my hand. So that gives them that feeling of, okay, I got to squeeze her hand between my shoulder blades, and that's going to allow them to perform that bent over row exercise appropriately. So also use verbal cues about, what it should feel like. So verbal, kinesthetic, visual, try to incorporate all three of those types of cues in various, parts throughout our classes. So that way each of those people with those different learning styles can choose, what is best for them. So other types of cues that are effective and things that we want to think about cueing in our classes is breathing. Okay, that's a big one, especially during our strength training segment of the class. For example, if I have somebody doing a arm curl exercise, I would say to exhale when you bring the weight up or curl up, and inhale when you lower it back down. Or a push up, I would say exhale as you push up and inhale when you lower down. So always try to reinforce the breathing cues during especially that segment of your class. Rhythm cues, the pace at which an exercise should occur. Does it do half time? Does it do, right at tempo? Does it do double time? So the rhythm at which, if you're doing a beat-driven type of workout. Anatomical cues, make reference to the part of your body, right? You should feel this on the back of your lower leg, or you should feel this on the back of your upper thigh, right? Anatomical cues. Numerical cues, how many reps should they be doing? Numerical, right? Count them down, 8, 7, 6, and so on. Directional cues, right? Are they going forward, backward, right, left? Safety, obviously safety. Proper execution of the exercise is key, so we want to make sure that we deliver safety cues. And then, of course, motivational. We need to offer positive reinforcement over the course of the class. And alignment, so just general postural cues are always important. Spatial cues would be like toe to head or head to toe, talking them through how their body should be positioned during that exercise. And of course, humorous is always nice. Add some humor to your class. Make people smile, make them laugh during your workout. They appreciate that. So a lot of information must be conveyed in a short period of time in our classes. Now, looking at instructional focus, we have two different styles of teaching. You have the command and the practice style. The command style traditionally is the most common one that's used today. So this is where the group fitness instructor makes all the decisions and they seek imitation by the participants. So basically, I lead, you follow type of thing, right? So the group fitness instructor makes all the decisions as far as what goes into the lesson plan, how the class is going to be taught, and the participants just come and follow that instructor. So the effect is created of uniformity. So everyone is doing the same thing together as a group. The practice style of teaching is where all participants are working on the same task. So, for example, I might have the participants in the class do, sit-ups for a minute or push-ups for a minute. And then I can just walk around and interact and give them feedback one-on-one as they're doing that exercise. So they're all working on the same task, and I would just encourage everyone to choose their own fitness level and work at a pace that's comfortable for them, but just offer support and feedback, as I walk the room and encourage them while they do that task. Another teaching style that is kind of popular is the self-check style of teaching. And this just relies on the participants providing their own feedback. So for example, they might be given a task. So going back to my, 1 minute of sit-ups, but then they're going to compare their performance against given criteria or past performances. So maybe they did a pre-test, 1 minute of sit-ups, and then they're going to do a post-test again and compare their past performance, how they did in the pre-test to what they're doing now in the post-test. Or maybe I'm going to give them a table that shows the rankings of people in their age group and their sex, males or females, and determine what their fitness ranking is based on the number of crunches they did in a minute. So that's the self-check style of teaching. So like I said, the command is probably the most popular teaching style. Okay, moving on to the domains of learning. During a class, the group fitness instructor must be able to quickly ascertain the group's abilities, their strengths, and their weaknesses. By understanding the learning process and being familiar with strategies that facilitate the teaching of motor skills, the group fitness instructor will be better able to educate the participants. So the three domains of learning we have are the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. So the cognitive domain really describes the brain's ability to gather and retain information and knowledge. You know, as a group fitness instructor, we should incorporate some elements of education into our classes. Use points in time where we can educate our participants about various health-related topics. The affective domain describes the emotional behaviors, beliefs, and the attitudes. So we can help participants help them to form a positive attitude about exercise possibly. And then the psychomotor just refers to those activities that simply require movement. So understanding the stages of learning helps the group fitness instructor gain an appreciation for their participants in a deeper way. So we must take into consideration the motor learning stages of the participants in order to create the most successful experience possible. So depending on what stage our participants are in, really will dictate the type of cueing and feedback that we are going to be giving them. So those participants who are in the cognitive stage of learning, they are new, okay? These are beginners. They have not been to your class ever, or they have not exercised in years and years and years. So these folks are going to have a lot of errors. Their form is going to be imperfect, okay? So this is common with those folks. And these are the people who tend to congregate near the back of the room. So we definitely want to pay extra special attention to those people who are new. They're in that beginner stage of learning. We're going to see a lot of errors in the performance of exercise. So they're going to require a lot more attention and a lot more cueing from us to correct those errors. And again, they do gravitate to the back of the room. The associative stage of learning, they tend to see improvements in the basic fundamental skills. So there's fewer and fewer errors being done by the participant, and they can concentrate on occasional cues from the instructor to improve their performance. So they're really starting to tie into our cues and make the changes in their performance based on some of those cues that we're giving. But we're still seeing errors, okay? These people tend to congregate to the middle of the room. And those folks who are in the autonomous stage, those people are where the skill becomes automatic or habitual. They can do the move before you even cue it, right? They're a step ahead of you. They could probably stand and teach the class for you. They're those regulars that are there every day. These learners can perform without following an instructor and can detect their own errors and correct them on their own. These are the folks who tend to gravitate to the front of the room. So there's a saying that we like to keep in mind, and that's have an ear for the front row, have an eye for the middle row, but have a heart for the back row, because those folks in the back row, they really need our personal attention. You know, there's a lot of errors going on. They feel very intimidated sometimes, and that's why they want to hide in the back row. So we want to make them feel welcome. We want to make them feel a part of our class, and we want to make them feel like it's okay to make errors, right? Progress comes with time. We have to continue to keep them coming back to class, and before you know it, they're going to be the ones in the front row. So think this one through. When performing push-ups, what movement errors might be observed in a participant who is in the cognitive stage of learning? Now remember, cognitive. Movement is new, lots of errors, imperfect form. So pause and give me some feedback. All right, some potential errors that could occur in that cognitive stage of learning are, number one, a sagging lower back or sagging hips that are height. So number one, they're doing a push-up. Their hips are gravitating to the floor, right? That's an indicator that the core is not strong enough to hold those hips up in that plank position, or maybe seeing those hips hiked up to the ceiling. So those people who that butt is up really high, they're almost forming a triangle, from their bottom, down to their head and down to their ankles. So that's a common error. Also, maybe that neck not being in neutral alignment. So we want to make sure that our participants are always keeping an eye on the mat. So if you say, keep looking at your mat, that's going to keep that neck in a neutral alignment. We don't want them looking up, right? And we don't want them driving their chin into their chest. We want to maintain neutral alignment of the neck. And then also not keeping the shoulders over the wrists. We want to line those joints up, stack them up, shoulders over top of the elbows, elbows over top of the wrist. Okay, so those are just a few common errors that we could see in those people that are in the cognitive stage of learning when performing push-ups. All right, next I want to get into teaching strategies, and these we're going to practice quite a bit in class. So the first teaching strategy that we have is the slow to fast teaching strategy. So one of the most important aspects of group fitness instruction is taking the appropriate steps to ensure the movements and exercises included in the class are delivered safely and effectively. To this end, an instructor must understand how to appropriately break down and build up movement patterns to ensure all participants experience success. So the slow to fast, or sometimes we call it half-time teaching strategy, is where the group fitness instructor introduces movement patterns so that participants initially perform them slower than the desired speed. So for example, say I'm performing a standard squat, body weight squat. So instead of it doing up to tempo with the beat of the music, where it's 1 count down squat, 1 count up, stand up, we do maybe 2 counts on the way down and then stand up in the 2 counts. Or maybe it's a 4 count down into the squat and a 4 count up into the standing position. So starting with a slow tempo of the exercise to kind of get them used to the particular movement, and then speed it up to tempo. The only disadvantage really of this is if you're doing this during the conditioning segment of your class, it does tend to slow the exercise heart rate. So if your goal is to keep the exercise heart rate high and elevated, probably try to limit the amount of slow to fast teaching strategies that you use during that particular workout. The next one is called repetition reduction. So this involves reducing the number of repetitions that make up a movement sequence. So for example, let's say I'm going to do 8 knees, say I'm doing step aerobics, and I'm going to do 8 knees on the right, and then switch and do 8 knees on the left, and then I go back to the right and I choose to do 4, and then 4 on the left, and then I go back to the right and do just 2 knees, and then 2 on the left, and then I go back to the right and do 1 and 1. So repetition reduction. So you're starting with, say, 8 reps of an exercise, going down to 4, going down to 2, and then going down to 1. Okay, repetition reduction is one of my favorite ways to add extra time into my workout. I could take a couple basic bits of choreography and make it last 10, 15 minutes if I wanted to by the simple repetition reduction teaching strategy. Another one that we see is the part to whole. This is where the group fitness instructor breaks down skills and teaches movement in isolation before integration. So for example, let's say that I'm doing a kickboxing class and I'm going to teach a jab with the right arm, and I might do a bunch of reps on the right, and then I want to do a front kick with the left leg. So I might do 8 jabs with the right, and then I might do 8 front kicks with the left leg. And then I might put them together, jab right, front kick left, jab right, front kick left. So apart, I'm individually teaching the move, which is the jab, and then the front kick, and then I'm putting them together as a whole combination. So you could do 2 moves, you could do 4 moves together, like I could do a jab, a front kick, I could do a hook, and then a duck. So I could do 8 jabs, and I could do, kicks, and then I could do hooks, And then I could do a bunch of ducks, and then we could put them together. Jab and a kick and a hook and a duck. So, you're doing a part, teaching them singly, one at a time, but then putting them together into a combination. And then the last one is the simple to complex, where the group fitness instructor reduces all the complexity options to the lowest common denominator and engages the class in movement. And then we add layers of complexity to the movements. So for example, let's say I'm teaching a basic right, doing step aerobics. Okay, so we're going to do basic right, basic left. That's the simplest way of doing that move. Then I could maybe make it a little bit harder and say, okay, instead of a basic right, we're going to change it to a mamba right and do a mamba. Okay, that's adding a layer of complexity to that one movement. Okay, so we can do a simple, but take that one movement and make it more complex. But start with the basics. Take it to the least complex, right? So the easiest way to perform it, and then add the tougher, or once they get that easy way, add the tougher way to do that movement. So we're going to be practicing these different teaching strategies in a lab, actually, so it's going to be a lot of fun to get together and actually perform some different moves and get a feel for what these teaching strategies are. So lastly, effective group fitness instructors are able to create progressions and regressions so that all participants can explore any movement within the class and experience success. When increasing the difficulty or the complexity or the intensity of a movement, which is called a progression, or decreasing the difficulty or the complexity or the intensity of movement, that's called a regression. A group fitness instructor can draw upon the considerations on this list, which form the acronym DRILLS, D-R-I-L-L-S. So that acronym stands for number 1, which is direction. So we can always change the direction with which we perform the movement to either make it harder or make it easier. So for example, let's say that I am doing a standard march in place. That's easy, right? But now we could say we're going to march up at a diagonal, march backwards, march up at a diagonal, march back. Just simply adding that direction to the movement can make it a little harder. Or we could look at the rhythm or the range of motion or the amount of resistance you're using or the number of repetitions to either make it harder or make it easier. So increasing the range of motion, decreasing the range of motion of that squat can either regress it or progress it. We could look at the intensity or the impact. Okay, the higher the intensity is when we jump. If both feet are off the ground, that's a high impact. That's a high intense movement versus keeping one foot on the ground at all times. That's a lower intensity and a low impact movement. So again, we can progress an activity by simply adding a jump to it versus not. Lever length is another one. Your arms and your legs are considered levers. So if you have straight arms, that's going to create a longer lever, which is going to add more resistance. Versus if you bend your elbows, that creates a shorter lever and less resistance. And then lastly, stability. We always want to start from a point of stability. So standing with your feet shoulder width apart. Okay, the wider your feet are, the more stable base of support you're going to have. The narrower the base of support, when you start to put your legs closer together or even put one foot in front of the other like you're walking on a tightrope, that's a way to progress an exercise and increase the level of stability. So you could do lots of things to increase the stability requirements of an exercise to progress it too. So we did lots of things and talked about a lot of things in this particular chapter. So like I said, we're going to take some time in the lab and really practice some of those teaching strategies